You ever catch yourself staring at a credit card statement, feeling pretty good about things? You paid last month's bill right on time, maybe even early. You're racking up a few points for groceries or gas. Life feels under control. Then, one afternoon, you pull up your credit score because you're thinking about buying a house or refinancing. Or hell, just applying for a nicer apartment so your kids have their own rooms. And the number looking back at you is way lower than you expected. Not catastrophic, but enough to make your stomach drop. You sit there thinking, wait, I've been responsible. I didn't miss payments. I didn't go wild, yet the system says otherwise. That quiet confusion, that little hit of shame mixed with frustration, I know it. A lot of us do. It feels personal, like you failed at some invisible test. But here's the thing most people never see coming. There's a credit card trick that quietly destroys your score. And it doesn't look like the dramatic stuff you see in headlines. It's not fraud. It's not maxing out every card in a spending spree. It's subtler than that. It happens in the background, month after month, while you're doing what you think is the right thing. I want to talk with you about it today. Not to scare you, but to let you breathe a little easier once you understand how it works. Because once you see the trick for what it is, it stops controlling the story. You stop wondering why your score feels stuck, even when life feels steady. And that shift? It's worth the 20 minutes we're about to spend together. Most of us walk around with this quiet belief that credit cards are pretty straightforward. Use them, pay them off, build a little history, maybe earn some rewards along the way. We think the score is basically a report card on whether we're good with money. Pay on time? Good. Keep the balance low? Even better. Close cards you don't use anymore? Smart, right? Cleans things up. But the scoring models don't actually work like a report card on your overall financial health. They're more like a very specific, slightly old-school algorithm that only cares about a handful of signals lenders use to guess how risky you are. And some of the things that feel responsible, or at least harmless, trip those signals in ways that quietly tank the number. It's not your fault for not knowing. The banks don't exactly send out a memo explaining the psychology behind their rules. They want you using the plastic. That's how they make money. So we end up learning the hard way, usually right when we need the score the most. Let me paint a picture that might feel familiar. Imagine someone, we'll call her Rachel because I've heard versions of this story from so many people. Rachel's in her mid-30s, steady job, 2 kids, rent that keeps climbing. She has 3 credit cards. One from college she barely touches, one she uses for groceries and gas because it gives 2% cash back, and one she opened a couple years ago for a big family vacation that she paid off over time. She's proud of herself. She pays every bill on time, sometimes even a little early. She never carries more than she can handle, or so she thinks. Then, one month, she uses the grocery card pretty heavily, back-to-school stuff, sports fees, that unexpected car repair. She figures, no big deal, I'll pay it off before the due date. But the statement closes on the 12th, and she doesn't get around to paying until the 20th. The balance reported to the bureaus is high, say 65% of her limit. She pays it off right after, no interest even. Sounds responsible, right? Except that single snapshot of high utilization just quietly dinged 30% of her score. Because amounts owed, credit utilization, is the second biggest piece of the puzzle after payment history. Here's where the psychology kicks in. We humans are wired for the immediate. We feel the relief of swiping for groceries today. We tell ourselves we'll handle it next week. That's present bias in action. The brain discounts future discomfort. Meanwhile, the scoring model doesn't care about your intentions or your eventual payoff. It only sees the snapshot the card issuer reports. And if that snapshot shows you using a big chunk of available credit, it looks risky, even if you've never missed a payment in your life. It's not about how much you owe overall, it's about the ratio. Keep it under 30% across all cards, ideally closer to 10%, and the models breathe easier. Anything higher starts to whisper, this person might be overextended, but utilization isn't the only quiet saboteur. Let's talk about closing cards. Rachel decides one day to tidy up her finances. That old college card has a $4,000 limit she hasn't used in 2 years. It feels pointless to keep it open. Extra mail, extra temptation, extra thing to monitor. So she calls and cancels it. Feels clean, responsible even. Except closing that card does two things at once. First, it shrinks her total available credit. Suddenly, her other balances look bigger relative to what's left. Utilization spikes without her spending another dime. Second, it shortens her average age of accounts. Length of credit history is 15% of the score, and that old card was helping anchor the whole thing. Even though closed accounts in good standing stay on your report for up to 10 years and keep aging, the immediate removal of that available limit and the slight dip in average age can still drop your score, sometimes 20, 40, even 60 points depending on the rest of your profile. It feels like you did the mature thing by simplifying, but the model reads it as less stability. And then there's the one that hurts the most emotionally, the late payment. Rachel's auto pay is set up, but one month the bank glitches or she switches checking accounts and forgets to update it. The payment posts 3 days late. No big deal in her mind because she catches it immediately and pays. But if it's more than 30 days past the due date when it gets reported, that single late payment lands like a hammer on the 35% of your score that is pure payment history. One 30-day late can drop an otherwise solid score by 60 to 100 points or more. It stays on your report for 7 years. 7 years. Why does this happen so quietly? Because life. Because we assume a couple days won't matter. Because the card company makes it easy to set autopay, and then we stop looking. The psychology here is optimism bias. We believe our good track record protects us from one slip. The model doesn't see your track record the same way once that slip is reported. It only updates its risk assessment. I've watched this play out in real ways that hit people right in the chest. A guy I know, steady electrician, great with his hands, terrible with paperwork, closed 2 old cards after a divorce to start fresh. His score dropped enough that when he went to buy a truck for work, the interest rate jumped almost 2 full points. That extra couple $100s a month meant less money for his kids' activities. Another woman, single mom, teacher, used her rewards card heavily every December for holiday gifts, paid it off every January. She thought she was winning, but those December statements were reporting 70 to 80% utilization year after year. When she applied for a mortgage, the lender saw a pattern of high revolving debt and offered worse terms. She ended up with a higher rate, which meant less house for the same payment. The quiet trick had been quietly costing her for years. The deeper layer is how this messes with your head. Money stress isn't just about the numbers. It's the low-level anxiety that follows you into every decision. Can I afford the apartment I want? Will my kid get approved for that student loan? What if something breaks and I need to borrow? When the score is quietly eroding, you start second-guessing yourself even when your actual finances are fine. You feel less free, more trapped by a number you can't quite explain. That's the real cost, the slow erosion of peace of mind. So what changes? The turning point comes when you stop treating the credit score like a judgment on your character and start seeing it for what it is, a very specific risk signal designed by lenders. It's not measuring your worth, your intelligence, or even how good you are with money overall. It's measuring how predictable your behavior looks through 5 narrow lenses. Once you accept that, something shifts. You stop feeling ashamed and start getting strategic. You realize the score is a tool, not a verdict, and tools can be managed without letting them run your life. You begin to see the psychology at play in your own habits. That dopamine hit from reward spending is real, but now you know it can quietly push utilization higher than it feels like in the moment. The urge to close old accounts for simplicity? That's your brain craving mental bandwidth, which is totally understandable, but now you know the trade-off. The assumption that autopay will always save you? That's trust in systems that sometimes glitch. Awareness doesn't eliminate the human stuff. It just gives you a little distance so you can make calmer choices. Here's how that awareness starts showing up in everyday life. You start checking your score more often, not obsessively, but monthly, the free way through your bank app or the annual credit reports everyone's entitled to. You notice patterns. You realize that big Amazon purchase for the kids' birthdays might be better split across 2 cards or paid down before the statement cuts. You make a habit of paying twice a month on the high-use card if things are creeping up, not because you have to, but because you understand the snapshot matters more than the final payoff.
You leave that old college card open. Maybe you put one small recurring bill on it, like the $8 Netflix subscription, and set autopay for the full amount. It costs you nothing extra, but it keeps the account active, keeps the age growing, and keeps that available credit in your corner. You feel less tempted to close things just to feel organized. If life happens and a payment slips, even for a few days, you fix it immediately. And if it reports late, you know it's not the end of the world. One late isn't a life sentence if the rest of your profile is solid. You might even write a goodwill letter explaining the one-time glitch, though results vary. The point is,